I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ortega.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Thomas. Councilmember Lauer.
Here.
Councilmember Thompson. Here. Councilmember Koch. Councilmember Koch.
Here.
Councilmember Applegate.
Here.
Councilmember Geek.
Here.
6 members present. Mayor Pro Tem Thomas did notify staff of his absence.
Okay. We'll move right into it. We're on item 4A, no presentations tonight, correct? Okay. Board Commission Committee appointments, we're appointing a member to the Planning Commission. Who's going to be speaking on this one? Sick.
One or two. If the alternate moves up, then there's.
Christy Martinez, Planning Supervisor. We do have a vacancy for a regular member on the Planning Commission. The Vice Chairperson resigned his position because he's taken a job out of state, so he's no longer going to be able to serve his duties. The vacancy was advertised in the local newspaper for 3 consecutive weeks, excuse me. And as a result of all of that, we did receive 2 applications. One application was from a Mr. Alan Rainville, who currently holds an alternate position on the Planning Commission. And then we received a second application from a Rodney Apodaca. If I butchered that, I apologize if he's here. So tonight you would need to decide who you would like to fill that regular member vacancy.
Okay, and
Mr. Alan Rainville is in attendance tonight, and I'm not sure if the second one is. Oh, they're both here.
They're both here? Okay, and so if we promote from the alternate position, can we fill that position tonight as well?
Yes, you
If
can.
that person's willing to take it?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And what's that look like recently, I guess, within the last 3 to 6 months? Has the alternate been called upon quite often?
Yes, they have.
Okay. So it's not maybe you might show up every once in a while, but it's been pretty consistent.
Correct.
Okay.
We have 2 alternates that serve on the Planning Commission, and it's at almost every meeting that one or both have had to serve.
Okay. And has that been working okay?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we have Mr. Apodaca and Mr. Rainville. And Mr. Rainville, you're currently in the position as the alternate right now. Okay. Okay. I'll just go with the order that we have on Mr. Apodaca. Would you like to say anything, or you just want to wait and see what happens?
I'll just wait and see what happens.
Okay. And Mr. Rainville, you can come up and say something as well if you'd like, and if council has any questions for either one of you. But.
Good evening. My name's Alan Rainville. I've been a civil servant my entire working career, and now being retired, I wanted to continue giving back to my community and my new community here in Fountain, Colorado. I'm from the East Coast originally. So I think the Planning Commission is going to be an interesting commission to work on and work with. So I just wanted to be appointed to the regular member as the Planning Commission.
Okay, and how long have you been as an alternate?
An alternate, I'm going to maybe 4 months, April, I thought it was, thereabouts.
And have you been called upon quite a bit?
Yeah, quite, I think just about every meeting except for one.
Oh, wow, okay.
Right.
Okay, so pretty busy, okay. Any questions for Mr. Rainville?
No.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Apodaca? No. The only question I have, let's go ahead, make a motion for, the regular position right now. Okay, Mr. Geek?
I make a motion to approve Mr. Rainville from the.
Okay, and Mr. Applegate?
Second.
Okay, well, motion is second to approve Mr. Rainville to the regular position. Please vote.
6 yes, motion carried.
Okay, and so, Mr. Apodaca, what that means is in an alternate position now opens up. Would you be willing to be appointed to that position?
Yeah, sure, with my 25 years of civil experience.
Okay. Okay, then if we would like to do that tonight, we can go ahead and take care of that. If we already have the applicant. Mr. Geek?
Make a motion to approve Mr. Apodaca for the alternate position.
Okay, and Mr. Applegate?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for appointment to that alternate position. Please vote.
6 yes, motion carried.
Okay, and thank you. Those are, again, just to finish those current terms. And so, but they're brand-new terms for these folks, right? They don't, they're not finishing out a second term or a first term, and they can have a second term if they'd like, I guess is my question.
The regular member is filling an unexpired 4-year term, which would go until September of 2022, so it's almost a full term.
Okay,
And then the alternate would be serving an unexpired 4-year term as well until April of 2021.
okay.
So there's still
okay.
significant lengths of time.
Okay.
And they can run again.
Yeah, I guess the other question is then they could enlist, I guess.
Correct. They can
Okay.
reapply.
Okay, okay. Well, thanks for being willing to step up and be a part of that. It's probably where the meat of the work that really occurs for the planning of the city. So thank you for being able to do that and being willing to do that. Okay, we'll go ahead and keep plugging forward. We have city council agenda requests and announcements. I'll start with Mr. Geek.
I have nothing tonight.
Mr. Applegate.
Nothing. I thought the parade just came off excellent, and it was just run with precision.
Yeah, good parade this year. Just really hot.
Run hot, yeah.
Mr. Koch, anything? Glad you're back.
Nothing here.
Okay. Mr. Lauer,
Nothing for me tonight, thanks.
Ms. Thompson.
I get everybody's time. Woohoo! All right. I'm really excited about an event. There's flyers at the back for September 19th from 4 to 7:30. We're having an open house with the various task force and focus groups that have been working around town. And we're also, with Scott's help, we invited Steve Schleicher, the county assessor, down. And he's doing a listening tour with people on VRBOs and short-term rentals, and wants to hear from people in the community and just talk about it, how that might affect neighborhoods, how it might affect your home personally, what are your interests in it. And so it's just a listening tour, so we threw this other event together to have more reason for the citizens to come down and talk with the different task force and focus groups of citizens that have been coming and find out what they're interested in. And I invited the senior center to come and hopefully connect with some seniors or people who have seniors in their home, what we can do to make the senior center better. And then the utilities is gonna come and talk about maybe some ways to save on your utility bill. And just last night, or a couple days ago, Tamara Estes from the Historical Society contacted me and asked if they would like the museum to be open that night, so that if people wanna come over and see the museum, because tomorrow night,
Ms. Thompson.
what?
Ms. Estes is coming up to talk about that.
Oh, I'm sorry, never mind about tomorrow night. People might want to go what she's talking about. Okay, thank you very much.
I don't want
All
you to
right.
take her thunder.
I don't want to take her thunder, that's right.
Okay.
And then we had a really exciting thing at the senior center today. I blatantly stole the coffee with an idea from Coffee with a Cop a couple years ago, and we have different people from the community come in, and a couple months ago, we had Lucia over there with Coffee with the Emergency Management to try to talk to the seniors about getting prepared for an emergency. And when she was talking to them, she found out many of them weren't registered with what we used to call the reverse 911 system. Now we call it the emergency notification system. And so she had some people come down from the E911 system today, and in 2 hours, they registered 50 to 60 seniors into that system. And a lot of them had 2 and 3 phone numbers. So it was very, very well worth our staff time to go up there and get that done tonight. And if you don't have that Everbright app on your phone, I didn't realize it, but once you have that app on your phone, it goes with you wherever you go in America or Canada. So if you're traveling and there's a thunderstorm or a tornado or something coming, that app will pull up on it'll notify you on your phone. So it's not just when you're in this local area. So she is gonna schedule another event on November 1st to try to hit more people in the community to get them registered with that. So I thought that was pretty exciting, couple hours today to get that many seniors registered. And then we had another meeting today working on the 2045 regional specialized transportation plan. I've had 2 meetings on that, trying to get our veterans where they need to go to transportation, some of them as far as up in Denver, and they need to get to the van at 7:30 in the morning up at Fillmore. And so we're gonna keep continuing to work on that. If anybody has any ideas, let me know. We need funding, of course. You have any funding and money laying around, let me know. And the one thing that was really interesting in that meeting today, though, is Kim Hoji from the VA said that only about 30% of our veteran population is served, registered, and using the VA. So if you qualify to be in the VA system, whether you need it or not, you should get registered to get in that. And apparently it's not real difficult to do, but if it is, we can figure out a way to do it. There's tons of people around here that can help you with that. And so in trying to figure out how to service people, if only 30% of your veterans that are qualified for it are registered, you need to get registered. So, is that enough? I can keep going. I just need to tease him.
Okay. A couple things I have. We have the community night in park on the 17th, which is Tuesday, from 4 to 7. Am I correct? At Metcalf, and so we'll have all the services out there. And I think the 4th ID band is coming from Fort Carson. So please come on out and enjoy that night. Fire department's gonna be there with food. Awesome. And apparently they're making new contraptions, and I saw one at the parade or at the thing. It had you ate it, Commander. It was like 2 patties with bacon and
Yeah, 2 patties, hot dog, and
yeah. So it was a heart stopper.
2 days.
Yeah. So.
I accomplished the mission.
Oh, okay, yeah. Drumming up business. So the community night in park is next Tuesday, so hopefully we have some good weather. I did just see that they're predicting possibly snow in the high country between now and next Tuesday, so we'll see what the weather pans out for us. It's that time of year. So, and then if you had a chance, this last weekend, the library did their 40th anniversary, and Scott and I did a presentation, which was actually a lot of fun. I had a really good time that night, just kind of sharing history and what's going on in the city of Fountain. And then Saturday, they had the longest table, which was, I saw this concept on YouTube or something, but it's just a table, and they invite people from all over to just come down and have a meal. And so I'd say there were about 50 people there. I don't know anybody else was here that night. You were there. Yeah, it was around 50 people maybe. 30? Yeah, that entire back room was filled. They originally were going to do it outside, but it started raining, so they moved it inside. It was a neat event, just a chance to sit down and talk with people. And they actually set out questions for the people to kind of discuss, but I think everyone else just had other plans, and it was just a nice event that the library hosted for the 40-year anniversary. So if you get a chance, go visit the library. It's a great place to go. And so I think that's it as far as announcements. Nothing else.
You know, very quickly, I'd like to, I said nothing, but I would like to see more military involved in the parade. And, you know, since we have a police chief that came from there, I would think that 2 bands or a couple of bands or something, they could handle.
We'll have a
Yeah.
discussion with the chief.
Yeah, we'll pass that along to the chamber and see what they can do in inviting them. Yep, okay. All right, public to be heard. Item number 6, citizens may address the council on items that are not on our agenda. We ask that you sign up with the clerk prior to the meeting, and council may not be able to provide a meeting answer, but we will direct staff to follow up. I have 3 cards. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes as much as possible. And I'll just go in order they were given to me with Miss Estes, the Historical Society.
Good evening, council members and citizens of Fountain. I'm Tamara Estes, and I'm from the Fountain Valley Historical Society, and I wanted to let everyone know, tomorrow night on the Homicide Hunter program, the museum will be featured in one of the stories. We have the murder confession board that was found in the house over by Auga Park in Mr. Chimino's house, and it's being featured on that. It'll be showed at 7 p.m., and it's on channel 104 on Xfinity and 285 on DirecTV. And if you're interested in seeing the board, I encourage you to come on over to the museum. We're open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., or you can give me a call and I can open up the museum anytime you'd like to see it. I'd also like to take the chance to thank Mayor Ortega and Mr. Trainer for supporting Colorado Fountain history in presenting at the library last week. I heard it was a fantastic presentation, and we really appreciate you supporting the history of Fountain. And this Saturday is the tour of the cemetery.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So don't forget that, it's $20, and it's the Murder and Mayhem Tour, so you hear about the murder board confession there too. So I encourage everybody to come. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. It got really intimidating as soon as that our talk started, because like a lot of the history of Fountain was there, sitting there watching us, and we were a little worried we didn't mess things up, but it was okay. It turned out okay, so I'm glad everyone enjoyed it. Our next card, Mr. Webster with Troop 164. The only thing, I think a couple meetings ago, we said that if you just tell us kind of generally you're from the city, because we're live recording, but then we did find in our charter that it's required that you tell us your address. So until we change that, I'm just going to ask that you at least give us a general neighborhood or even a street you live on, and that's really up to you if you want to do that or not. So,
Mr.
but
Mayor,
according to
just
the
to-
charter, it is.
It's not in the city charter, it's the municipal code.
Oh, it's a municipal
So
code.
we won't be
Okay.
changing the charter. We'll have to update the municipal.
We just update the code. Okay. All right. So it's in our code, but please come forward.
So thank you again for your time. As you recall, my name is Larry Miller. I'm the chapter chair for Troop 164 in Fort Carson, and I'd like to introduce one of our scouts that's working on the Citizenship and the Community Merit Badge, who wasn't able to be here 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I'm Jonathan Webster with Troop 164. I was wondering about the water system, on how often you guys check about the contamination level of it.
Okay, so that's your question? Okay, so the question, and speak a little bit louder into the mic, is just how often we're testing the water coming through the system. I'm going to kind of try to answer this the best I can, and I'll have Curtis, our utility, he's not here, but, oh, you are here. But we'll have Mike do it because he's also, he's our water guy as well. But, we get that water tested, it's a monthly, are we doing it monthly, or is it every week?
We actually test the water for different contaminants weekly. We are in the middle of a every 5-year test called the Unregulated Contaminant Review, and that is done every 5 years for the EPA. But we have 92 contaminants we test for, and we test weekly for some of them throughout the year. It's a schedule that we file with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. By the way, Troop 422, Eagle Scout, so.
And specifically for PFAS, how often are we testing for that?
PFAS, we're testing both treatment plants twice weekly.
Okay, twice weekly. Okay, and what's the requirement for that?
There is no requirement.
There is no requirement. Okay.
There is a health advisory limit that is 70 parts per trillion. We treat to non-detect. So we test the influent, and then we test the one port on each tank, and we test the effluent.
And so I think that's something to note as well for the public as well, because it's a good question. Because it's a really big deal right now, and it's something that really, it was thrown in our lap, and we have to deal with the issue. We don't have to test for it, for the PFAS, the perfluorinated compounds. And so as a commitment to the customers and to the people who actually pay for the water and are drinking the water, we've committed to testing twice a week to make sure we're at those levels that are considered non-detect, which means we can't find it in there, or the numbers are so low that they're non-detectable. So that's kind of the commitment we've made to the citizens and the ratepayers who pay for that water on a monthly basis. So where there are some levels, as you heard tonight, or some contaminants we only test for every 5 years. This is one that we're testing twice a week for, just to make sure we're on with that. And interestingly enough, for you and the public, Governor Polis was here today at 4:30, and 4 o'clock, and we met with him to kind of go over the situation and how Fountain has handled it and worked with our partners. Because if anybody was looking at the Denver Post today, as Mike put it on above the fold, was that this contamination is now kind of reaching levels across the state, and so they're finding it more and more in every community, in every waterway, in every water system, and it can be because of firefighting foam, which is the big way that that's contaminating our water. So still a lot of science that needs to be done around what do the PFAS chemicals do to the body, and how long does it stay in your body. That's not our end. Our end is to make sure we can clean that water and make sure it's not in there. We got to let the science figure all that other stuff out. So currently that's where we are. It's a lot, but again, as we talked about last time, we're in a really fortunate position that we are with the Air Force, because now that more and more communities, even statewide, are coming up with this, it's just it's a hard thing to figure out. And I didn't even put it together, but the governor said, the communities that don't have an Air Force that's causing a problem, it may be a volunteer fire department. How do you make them pay for something like this? And so it's going to be a more global, bigger issue that I think we're just at the very tip of it, and we'll see what happens over time. So thank you for your question. Is there anything else?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I just have a follow-up question. Are those
Go ahead.
results being posted for the public to view?
It takes about 2 weeks to get the results back, but we do post the results on our website. It's sometimes tough to find, but we've got 4 years of testing posted up there. Plus, every year we have a consumer confidence report that we publish and we post on our website that covers all 92 of the regulated contaminants and all of our sources of water.
Thank you very much once again.
Yep, thank you. All right. And we send something out in the mail too, right, with that? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Very interesting stuff in there if you need to sleep. Okay, Ms. Meininger.
Deborah Stout-Meininger, community advocate, citizen scientist. And I live in Fountain up at the north end on Southmore, halfway between Walmart and the senior center. I'm not real happy with the testing on the water because I did read that report. And the EPA put out the health alert, which you're not required to follow. Wonderful. On 70 parts per billion was what they considered the maximum, even though it's still dangerous at that amount because of the fact that it builds up in the body. And that's the PFOAs as well as the PFOS. But what I'm not happy about is when I looked at the report that y'all published, which was a very nice report on the stats this last time, but it said parts per billion instead of parts per trillion. Now, two things that I just not real happy about yet. I'm not satisfied yet because they say we're all safe. That's like finding out that the city knew about it in October before the January where it came out in the paper, and then everybody was mad because the paper, the Business Journal, told the public when the cities knew the October before that, January. And you'd already made changes. Changes were good, but we should have heard it from the city first. And now we've got parts per billion, and I know from information I've gotten at other sources that there's only one site, one place, that does the testing parts per trillion. We don't evidently test for parts per trillion. Also, I asked, do we test the water that goes in as well as the water that comes out for what levels, difference in levels there are? That's part of finding out if the system is really working right because we have variable resources of water at different times. And history tells us that although you may mean well, the public's not always alerted to when it's switched from one to another. Should we know that? Yes. Have I always known that we've got secondhand water since I moved here over 25 years ago? Yeah, that was part of the joke of living in Fountain, the secondhand water. But if you want to be honest with the public And not only that these PFOAs and PFOS are in the firefighting phone, but even if you go up to Weld County, they'll tell you 95% of that contamination comes from the fracking wastewater that is dumped in wells. Which then goes into the aquifers. It's dumped in the processed wastewater from Colorado Springs Utilities, because they're the only ones big enough to handle industrial waste. And that it's in the groundwater. So just Big Johnson Reservoir. So be honest with the people, because it's still this shuffle, this card shuffle. It doesn't make me happy that it's still going on. Thank you.
Okay. A lot of not accurate information. Did you get a lot of that, Curtis, that we can clear that up at the next meeting? Okay, thank you. Our next one, I don't want to mess up your name, Mr. Klopotels? Kloptik, I'm sorry. Please come forward.
Mine are just going to be some questions and won't take up too much of your time.
You go ahead.
I live on Rancher Drive. I was told some years ago that reason why the street hasn't been paved, our section, was because of new water connections being done in the ground. A year or two after that is supposed to be done, then we will see a repave on our street. I have yet to see the repave. Okay, we've got potholes that I've talked to the city about, and the city, they've come and patched some of them, but within 3 months, they're right back again. Okay, so that's a question, is when is this gonna happen? The other parts of Rancher Drive are done. Our part isn't. Another thing, and I'll leave it at that with the city, with the council. Another part is when, on Lake Drive, when right there it's paved, where they the railroad redid the crossing right there. They didn't pave it, they left rocks. And then we're talking this deep of a fall off. 4 people that I knew of right after that incident lost their cars, either due to the fact of electrical issues, and it cost more to fix, so they had to get rid of their cars, suspension. Finally, somebody came and paved a little bit of it. It has yet to be paved properly. Okay, I'd like to know who's responsible for paving that little section right there. Is it the railroad department or is it the city department?
It's the railroad, yeah.
Railroad.
We're actually restricted by law not to even touch the area.
Okay.
So.
Who do we talk to get this done?
We've been talking to the railroad about it.
Yeah, all those numbers are listed. If you go downstairs in the lobby and you look at one of the monitors, that monitor has all those numbers.
So it's up to us to call about a public road that the railroad has not finished?
We'll call as well. We're in constant contact with them, but we'll call them, and it could be weeks, months until they.
Well, it's already been years.
It'd be great if you'd help. Give them a call as well.
Okay, that's another thing. Okay. Like I said, this is my first time coming here because I don't really have a lot of complaints with the city, but this one really irks me. Okay. Carports. I'm hearing from my friends who already have carports that they have been threatened, basically, that they can be fined and liens against their homes to take their carports down. There's no grandfathering of this new ordinance that y'all passed. I don't have a carport yet, but I want one. And the reason why I want one, I have a 2-car garage. Mine is bigger, my house is bigger usually than most homes in Rancher Drive. It was later built. These people don't have room to put a 4-door truck, extended cab, okay, short bed, even in their garage by either length or height. Okay, some people don't even have a 2-car garage. Okay, what are they supposed to do? Okay, we've had 20 years, we had a storm from God knows, you know? I lost just about every car I owned. Okay, I want to do something to fix that. I want a carport. But now I'm being told that the city has to approve it. All I do is bring down a picture of what I want. You approve and show you a picture of my home, and you approve it. But I'm hearing something that now it has to have a structural engineer inspect it. Is this true? Does it have
It's
to
over
have a
200 square
permit?
feet.
Because it's over.
Got to be over 200 square feet before you
Okay,
have
it's a,
to have
well, it's gonna be 18 feet wide and over 20 feet, and 20 feet long, and it does not exceed, well, it's a two-car. Okay, and it's not gonna exceed, it's not gonna exceed all of the full length of my driveway.
Well, under current, yeah, that would have to be permitted.
It would have to be permitted by who? By the city of Fountain or by the city of, Colorado
So it depends on the
Springs?
size, and it depends on how it's being built. So if it's a kit that you purchase, yeah, it should come with an engineering stamp on it that shows what the snow load is.
Okay,
So when you purchase the kit, make sure you purchase one that has that on it.
Okay.
And Christy can go over all that with you, and what she would need for you. What we need people to do is not be blocking line of sight.
right.
They need to be obviously fastened down. We've got some that people are putting on bricks that aren't fastened down. You know, so I mean, there's
Yeah,
some
no, I,
good reasons
believe me, I
behind
don't
it.
want my carport going down the road.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
you're gonna
need
spend
that.
a lot of money on it. And so, it's always been anything over 200 square feet has
Okay.
to go through regional building, that's put on your property to make sure that it's not over utility easement, to make sure that it's not blocking your neighbor's line of sight, or it's actually on your property. We have some that are on their neighbor's property. And, so it's not a really complicated process if you're doing it from scratch. So if you'll work with Christy.
Yes, I will,
But
and-
we want people to have carports. We really do, but we've got some that people have turned them into garages.
And that was
they
another
block the
thing.
line of sight.
And that was one thing too that I wanted to bring up. We have a code enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Can't they,
And
do
code
something?
enforcement is trying to work with those people who have gotten letters saying, we need you to come into compliance.
okay, that,
So,
yeah.
and they've been given 9 months to work with it. So it's not like we're gonna send you a letter and we're done. We have 9 months to come in, and we hope people will come in sooner rather than later to work with our department and find out if it's one the city can improve or it's one you need to work with regional.
okay, so
But if it's
basically-
stick-built, anything stick-built, no matter what size, obviously has to go through regional building.
Yeah, well, these are gonna be the metal, I know, the metal ones.
Yeah.
And some friends of mine already have theirs. So what do they need?
So they need to contact Christy, or and we can make a meeting and find out, hopefully they have their receipts and it has all their, paperwork and stuff that came with it. It has that engineering stamp on it and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully it's fairly simple. We've had people that come in and it hasn't been real complicated. We've had some that a little bit more complicated because they don't necessarily have their paperwork and they're trying to have to retrieve things from where they got it. And but the main thing is we want people to have them. We understand people don't have cars nowadays that don't fit in their garages. But, we don't want a kid getting backed into it because somebody puts one with sides all the way down to the ground on the edge of the sidewalk,
Right.
so.
Okay, but if it's, like, you were talking line of sight, how are we talking line of sight from
That
house to house?
Christy can go through all
Or-
that stuff with
okay.
you that's in it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay, thank you. And then Rancher Drive, though, we need to figure out some, I have your number here if we have someone contact you about Rancher Drive and the paving. Will that be okay? Okay. Okay, is that good? Okay. All right, that's it for the cards. Anybody else? Okay. We'll move on to our item number 7, consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be approved in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless council member or citizens request, in which case item may be removed and considered separately. We have items A and B under consent. Mr. Geek
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
and Mr. Lauer.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Please vote.
6 yes, motion carried.
Okay, no old business tonight. We'll move right into item 9, new business, 9B. A request for a transfer of ownership of a fermented malt beverage FMB license for Great Escapes Colorado Springs LTD from Colorado Springs South LLC, DBA KOA, located at 8100 Banley Drive. Hi.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm presenting this item. I just want to make sure as the applicant here, they did notify us that the applicant was out of town for this. He wished he could be here. So I'm left to present it. This is just a transfer of a liquor license for the KOA. The KOA was sold and transferred, and so this is a request to transfer the liquor license. One sort of hiccup with the application, we do a background check, and something popped up that they didn't list on their application, and that was explained in their application in the addendum. But ultimately, the council's review of this application is primarily is if the applicant is of good moral character, and so in your review of that, that should sort of guide your decision making this evening.
Okay, can you explain, I read the explanation, but to me it's a little confusing.
Okay, the applicant pled guilty to a driving while intoxicated in March of 2011, and it sounded like he believed it was a deferred sentence that would get dismissed upon his completion of a probationary sentence. And all we could see through the DMV records is that he pled guilty to it. And so that was his explanation for why it wasn't included on his application where it asked for convictions. So ultimately, just the fact that he had that in his criminal history is not in and of itself representative of the moral character, but certainly it may be reasonable to believe that if you know that based upon your review could be an honest mistake or could be evidence of not good moral character. So
Okay.
That's up to you to decide in the review. Normally, right, we'd have the applicant here to answer questions, and that would be helpful, but he unfortunately couldn't make it this evening.
Okay, so receive deferred adjudication?
Yeah, adjudication. That's right.
Adjudication, sorry. That was not good.
So I am unable to verify whether or not he actually received that, and the idea would be that if you complete a deferred adjudication, that it would be dismissed off of your record. But that's not the information we received from the DMV.
Because it was still on his record.
It was still on his record. So it's possible that maybe he didn't finish that successfully or some other thing. It's hard to know exactly what happened.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions right now? And nobody is here from,
The KOA, that's
KOA
correct,
or
or the
anything?
new KOA.
Okay.
I think I forget the applicant's name.
okay.
Great Escapes, Colorado.
And
Springs.
the certificate of fact of good standing is for Great Escapes?
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay. So, and Great Escapes is taking over the KOA?
Yes.
Okay. And this is just the person who is basically the one that's,
A representative for that LLC, yes.
okay. So the LLC is a bigger,
It's the business organization. I actually am not sure if it's on an
Okay.
LLC, but the company, I'll say.
okay.
Is he the owner?
I would assume he's
I
the
would
owner if
assume
he's the
he's
one
the owner,
applying,
yeah.
yes. Yeah,
He's purchased the franchise.
I'm sorry,
He's purchased the franchise for Great Escapes to take over
the KOA, okay,
Mhm. I just,
Oh, it's a franchise. Okay.
okay, that makes.
and typically, transfer of ownerships actually go on consent, but as Troy said, that because
Because of
there
the
was a
addendum.
discrepancy in the individual history, and the question, on number 10 in the individual history is the one that the addendum is referencing to.
Right, okay. And does Great Escapes have other, that you know of, other,
I don't know.
don't know, okay.
I think question number 10 is pretty clear. Have you received a suspended sentence, a deferred sentence, or fortified bail for any sentence? And you're telling me that this was a deferred sentence.
And that's what he put in his,
So it's
in his
in his
addendum.
answer. But I think the question is pretty clear. on whether you had that or not.
Well, again, I think based on his addendum, he thinks that it was already cleared. And so,
But I think what
I guess if,
Councilmember Thompson is saying is that it specifically asks about deferreds as well.
oh, okay.
So let me read question 10. Deferred sentence would be the same thing as a deferred adjudication.
Okay,
That's synonyms for each other.
okay.
Just real quickly, as Troy stated, that this item that's come before you, rather than being a consent item, is for you to verify whether or not this applicant is of good moral character. And so although that's a gray area, that's for city council to decide.
And it's hard to tell when the person's not here.
Yes.
Is there any way to delay this until the applicant can be here? Would he have to apply again and pay the fees again?
He's
or
out of the
what?
country, I believe. I believe it's for the next 20 days or something. He explained to Joni, 20 or 30 days. He requested that it not be postponed, although there is a way to table this item, and he can apply for a temporary liquor license that's issued through my office to continue to sell there at the KOA rather than stopping service to their customers. They'll continue to sell under the current license, although he's running the operation, and we can still postpone it or table this item if you'd like until he returns.
Would he have to pay the fees again?
No.
That seems fair.
That would be my
But
recommendation.
he's not applied for that temporary, so presumably they're not serving alcohol right now, because the transfer has taken place, and they don't have a current liquor license.
They should
until
have a
this is-
current liquor license under KOA still. Typically, once they physically take over the premise is when they apply for the temporary license.
Okay.
So they can continue to sell until the new license is.
Do we know when they're gonna physically take it over?
I don't. It's my understanding that they have a current deed on the property.
Okay.
What do you think, Gabe?
I don't know on this one.
You are 8 years ago, it isn't too immoral, but that'd be worth looking into.
Okay, so here's another question, I guess, because we've not dealt with one like this, I don't think. Had he marked yes, would we still be having a discussion?
No.
No?
We probably would, it would just be on consent, and if somebody wanted to pull it because of that answer, they could have,
Because
but,
that has happened before, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess, well, I'm kind of, I don't know,
would recommend that we pull it till next meeting and that give him time to be here.
and I might suggest 2 meetings to give him plenty of time. Do you think that would be enough time?
Yes, I'd agree with that.
If he's not here in the meantime, they'll have to quit selling liquor if they take over the property?
No, it's still continued in KOA's name until this is approved.
Oh, okay, I get you.
Yeah, if he physically takes over the premise, then he would have to apply for a temporary liquor license.
Okay, well then that makes sense.
I think that's reasonable.
Yep.
Unless anybody objects to that and thinks we should vote on it today, but I think it's reasonable to, I would want to be here to defend myself and show that I am of good moral character. I mean, it's kind of a big deal. Or have at least someone here in your stead that could speak to you, so. So can we, I'm not seeing any kind of.
Table it. Table it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so is that good enough direction?
Table it until a date specific. Can we choose a council meeting date?
Yes.
So do you need that said specifically for the record?
Just so that we know, aware that we're gonna put it on a specific agenda and contact the applicant.
You said a month?
Yes.
2 meetings from now?
The next, that would be
October 8th?
October 8th.
October 8th? That's fine. Okay. So we look to table this item to October 8th for the applicant to be here and speak on their behalf.
Is there a motion on that?
That will be my motion.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for tabling. Please vote.
6 yes, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Item 9C, resolution number 19-056, a contingency resolution amending the appropriation of fiscal year 2018. Mr. Lewis.
Good evening, Council. John Lewis, Finance Director for City of Fountain. At our last meeting, we talked about some items that had been approved by you to be spent in 2017, but were not spent until 2018. And based on a suggestion from the Department of Local Affairs to come in compliance with state regulations, they asked that we prepare this budget contingency. And when we look at the details, and at one of the meetings where we had a supplemental, I had a request from a citizen to actually show it up on the screen, so happy to do that. And there were three funds that were impacted. One was the Volunteer Fire Fund. In 2018, we had quite a bit of wildland fire activity, and therefore we received additional revenue, and we had additional expenditures to go along with that, including equipment for mobile command, training for increased, for additional volunteer fire, and uniforms for those volunteers, as well as SCBA gear for them. The net result with the additional revenue was actually an increase to the fund to the tune of $21,104. The street resurfacing fund, we received some additional sales tax to the tune of $55,806, and that revenue was spent on some higher costs for chip and seal projects on maintenance. And also there was an additional amount from that sales tax that has to be paid to the Fountain Urban Renewal Authority, and so those amounts were paid. And again, that was a net increase to the street resurfacing fund to the tune of $40,168. The final item was a street improvement fund. We did receive additional sales tax, and there was $583,074 of capital that was approved by you to be spent in 2017. It wasn't spent until 2018, and as a result, that's part of the reason, along with increased interest rates, that we had additional investment income, because that $583,000 had not been spent until 2018. And so the fund balance was decreased by $537,098, and that was a decrease in 2018 as opposed to where it was initially budgeted in 2017. So with that, we would ask that you approve this contingency resolution. We'll then file it with the state, and that will comply with the state regulations for those amounts that were spent in 2018.
Okay. And again, this money's already been spent.
That's right.
We just need to report that to the state.
That's
for
correct.
our audit.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from council? It is budget, so any questions from public? No? Okay. What would council like to do? With item 9C, Mr. Lauer.
Move to approve resolution number 19-056.
And Mr. Applegate.
Second.
We have a motion second for approval. Please vote. Vote.
I did, didn't I?
6 yes, motion carried.
Okay. All right. Item 9D, resolution number 19-057, a resolution amending the appropriation of fiscal year 2019 budgeted funds. Mr. Lewis.
Yes, and now we're on to 2019 and a supplemental for the 2019 budget. As you know, on December 11th of 2018, you passed the 2019 budget, and at that time, of course, we estimated some of the revenues and we estimated some of the expenditures that would have to be made this year, and some of that has changed. And at the same time, there were certain capital items that you had approved in 2018 that now have to be spent in 2019, and on June 11th, you did approve the supplemental for those carry forwards. Since that time, as I said, there's been additional revenue with some required corresponding expenditures, and therefore we are recommending that you approve this additional supplemental to the 2019 budget. Those items include, and again, we've put them up on the screen. In the general fund, we received a grant for life pack purchase, as well as insurance proceeds for building damage that was done during the hailstorms last year, for the building damage, most of it to the roof of this building. So obviously, since we've received those insurance proceeds, we also need to now approve doing the repair. And so we have that as $101,000 roofing repair on this building. The additional expenditures in the general fund include $8,520 for AutoCAD licenses that we're paying a little bit upfront this year to save $2,000. ShoreTel phone maintenance, and we had to switch a carrier for the maintenance to High Point Communications. Turned out to be a higher cost, and we want to put in surveillance cameras in the police department at their request for $5,600. Those total expenditures are $119,120. The net increase to the general fund is actually increasing the general fund reserve, $29,939. The water fund is a decrease in the water fund reserve of $65,000, and that includes a few things that had not been estimated during the budget process for 2019. One is a study on the road damage from the water on Darneel. So doing a study on that to try and determine where that is coming from so we can fix it. Another $50,000 that we're going to need for defending water rights, and $5,900, which is our commitment to the Fountain Creek watershed. The electric fund, there's no change to the fund balance. We're reallocating $400,000 of the bond proceeds to the Verizon co-location for broadband studies, and we're taking that from the system improvements that were budgeted and came from bond proceeds. Conservation Trust Fund, we're asking for an additional $35,000. Some of that is hydromulch for upgrading the dog park, the Mesa Sports lighting costs that were charged by Electric Fund, but we did get a $7,200 decrease due to work that was performed by Parks employees, and then 2 new scoreboards for Metcalf ball fields. So that would come out of the Conservation Trust Fund, which is a committed fund and can only be spent on Conservation Trust items. The final item is a refund of property taxes due to abatement grants that El Paso County Assessor has given to Walmart properties from prior years. He came back and said, okay, well, we assessed your property too high, we're lowering it, and as a result, you get a refund of property taxes. The amount was already covered in the general fund, but not in the GID number 1 fund of $21,240. So with that, I want to ask if there are any questions.
On that refund, we don't carry money just in case there's a refund, right? Where do we pull that money from?
Well, that's coming out of the GID number 1 fund where that revenue went into in the first place.
Okay, but if we didn't have a GID, that would, because that's part of the GID, right? You see what my question is?
It's just the amount of mill levy that is charged to Walmart from the GID fund.
Right.
So we receive revenue from GID. It has its own special mill levy, and that is restricted to that fund.
I know, but if, let's say this Walmart wasn't in the GID, where would that money come from? Am I making sense?
If the Walmart wasn't in the GID, it wouldn't have been taxed in the first place for a GID.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? So, yeah. Now, every taxing district, whether it's, I think they're in the Harrison School District up there or Stratmore Hills, they all have a portion that they have to refund based on Walmart.
So it's not just us.
Oh, no. And apparently Walmart's doing this statewide. And in fact,
Yeah.
Troy's aware of some of those at least, but yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. But I mean, so this is I guess my question still goes back to, if this wasn't a GID property, could this occur in a non-GID?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so where would that money, that's my question, is where would that money then come from?
What happens is, so there wouldn't be a GID refund, right? But let's say it's the city share of the property tax or Stratmore Hills Fire, right?
Right.
They had to turn around and they had to pull it right out of their fund. Now, when you're large enough, like we are, the state, the timing of those taxes come in at different times, right? So they receive them and remit them back to the city. Well, they actually had enough that they hadn't remitted back to the city that we never received, so they just paid that.
Oh, okay.
So it never even got to us. They received it, they got the refund, and they paid it back before they even remitted it to us. In the case of the GID is so tiny that they didn't have that on hand. Not they, the GID, but they, the state, had already remitted everything, and so the GID just has to pull it right back out of the GID.
Okay. I guess
Stratmore Fire Department had to do the same thing.
my confusion is at my house, if I get money, I spend it right away, so where am I gonna find the money to pay something back if,
Yeah.
I get that's my.
And that's a legitimate concern.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. And so if you're Stratmore, that they actually had a little bit higher refund, their tax rate's a little bit higher up there. That's a challenge for those guys because they have such a tiny budget to begin with.
Right.
So they're refunding. If GID's 21, I think they were 40-ish, somewhere in that ballpark.
Because you're not budgeting for a refund. When I budget, I don't
Right.
budget to refund.
Right.
Yeah, and we luckily have it in our reserves, so.
So it would come out of our reserves. I guess
The
that's
GID fund, yes, it comes
Okay.
out of the reserves.
okay. All right. Other questions from council?
Be clear.
Okay. Mr. Rick's up. Come on up.
Gordon Rick, Countryside. I believe you said we were paying $40,000 to defend some water rights?
50,000.
$50,000? We've got a city attorney, why are we paying somebody else to defend those
Our
rights?
city attorney isn't a water rights attorney, and that's, if I'm speaking clearly enough, that's kind of apples and oranges, and so you really need someone with that expertise as a water rights attorney. It's kind of like, I got in an argument with someone before, well, we have an engineer, they can just do it. Well, they may be a road engineer, they don't have any knowledge in electrical engineering, so it's kind of the same thing.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay. Mike,
am I on here?
I don't know.
This was actually not for legal services.
Okay.
This was for professional engineering services. We enter into a contract every November with Wheeler and Associates to defend our water rights. And they, in this case, are the water rights engineer for the applicant. We are the opposer. We cannot share their services. We are sharing the services of a conflict professional, another water engineer with Whitefield Water District on this case, which involves defending the yield of the Fountain Mutual shares that we own. So this is actually professional services that are engineers, not attorneys. And the normal budget for this would have gone to Wheeler and Associates, and instead it's going to Leonard Rice Engineering. So
Okay.
we had
Thank-
to engage a conflict professional here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification, Mike.
Wow. That's weird.
It's water.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Confusing.
Okay, you have to come forward. We'll need you on the mic, sorry.
Yeah, Rodney Uptalk. I live on Darnell Drive, and I know you mentioned a mention of trying to figure out why the road is falling apart. Since I live on it, I know the exact reason why that's falling apart. There's 3 to 4 homes that run their sump pump drains out onto the street.
Yeah,
And so
yeah, the question is where's that water coming
I
from?
can tell you exactly all the 3 or 4 homes that.
Oh, no, we know which homes it's coming out of. We don't know.
Coming into the homes and why?
Yeah.
Oh,
Is there a way to stop it above the homes?
Yeah, because until we figure out the source and able to stop the water.
But it's the sump pump. All those homes there have sump pumps that drain,
Right.
I drain mine into kind of a leach field.
Yeah.
Everybody has one up there.
Yeah.
But these people were draining it into the streets.
Yeah, and it's a pretty big, complicated mess that we're dealing with in that area, and,
I mean, I know there's some drainage off of the irrigation.
Right.
But the upper one, I don't see that being used anymore. The lower one below that street by the high school is being used.
Right.
But the upper one isn't.
Yeah,
hasn't
no,
been used.
there's a conglomerate of issues in that area, and it's kind of the point where we're needing geotechnical engineers to come in and we're having to look at prior developers, and there's just so much intricacies to this problem that it's.
Well, when I moved there, that wasn't a problem. When these homes started draining into the street, the closest drop inlet is way down on the next street.
Right.
So all that way where the road is damaged.
Right.
Is from all that water.
Right.
Off the sump pumps, and so, I mean, I guess if you need an engineering stamp to say that.
There's a lot of intricacies that are involved it's the water, they just don't know where it's coming from, and until we figure out where that water is coming from and how it's getting there, we can't. Yeah, we can't.
Off of runoff.
It's not from the runoff. It's from underground.
My sump pump gets off of my house.
Right.
And my sprinkler system, my sump pump runs. That's the only time my sump pump runs.
Okay, and yours is it's a different situation where these 4 houses were built. That there's some theories on where that water is coming from, and it's not just from the runoff. It's
underground water.
It's underground water. There's a possibility there's an aquifer there that's been drilled into.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying on that, but the road is damaged from the sump pumps.
Oh yeah, and we know that, but again, there's an underlying cause and underlying
cause behind the underlying cause.
Right.
Yeah, but when homes are draining their sump pumps directly to the street.
Right, the study we're talking about here is to figure out where the water is coming from that they are having to drain. Because when they tried to drain into other areas, they just created even different problems.
Yeah, but
from
John,
road damage.
they can't use the leach field like you do, because theirs runs constant.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I put that in myself. But what other ones have next to me or around me is they run between the homes. They have the rock, and those drain down into the aquifer. So there's water going on top of water. So I was just curious on how you guys were looking at it at that point, because
yeah.
It wasn't a problem when I first moved there.
No,
and now it's just.
Yeah, in a
Todd,
second,
follow
yeah.
up?
And so again, there's just more to this issue than just the sump pumps running and
Mr.
creating
Papadoco,
the
why
problem.
don't I meet with you and I can show you what studies we've done? Because I'd like your input on just what your experiences have
Yeah.
been. But we'll sit down, I'll show you what we've done and kind of some solutions we're looking at.
Okay.
Because we'd love to get your input.
All right.
So let's get together, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and that's one of those that we it's not just a simple, the sump pumps are running. There's like I said, a conglomerate of issues. I don't know how to best explain it, and until we get to that root source, it's gonna be a problem that is gonna be a money waster until it gets fixed. So, anybody else?
I would like to add that the details there, all items are applicable to your strategic plan priorities, impacts transportation infrastructure, telecommunications technology and capabilities, distribution of public safety resources, and improving the availability of venues which support community activities.
Right. Okay, thank you for the reminder on that one. Okay, so barring no other questions, what would council like to do with this resolution? Mr. Lauer
I move to approve resolution number 19-057.
and Mr. Geek?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Please vote.
6 yes, motion carried.
All right.
Thank you,
item-
council.
Thank you, John. Item 9D is first, or 9E, sorry. First reading of ordinance number 1738, and ordinance disconnecting a portion of land sometimes known as Singer Ranch, generally located southwest of the intersection of Fontaine Boulevard and Mark Shuffle Road, and hereinafter more specifically designed in Exhibit A. Mr. Troy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is an item unique, I'll say, and interesting. Mr. Singer owns an area of land about 275 acres. And his request tonight before the council is to actually, and that land that he owns is within the city of Fountain currently. And he is requesting the council to consider a disconnection from the city of Fountain, what I've been calling a de-annexation, so that he can sort of rejoin the county and leave the city of Fountain. It's a unique request, one that from the legal side doesn't have a lot of precedent, but the Colorado state law gives the council wide discretion in considering these types of requests, and what the council should consider in determining this request is if the best interests of the city would be prejudiced by approving the disconnection. That's the language of the state law. And so city staff has reviewed the request, listed some concerns there in the commentary, and the applicant is here with his representation to I'm sure discuss some of those concerns, and ultimately to kind of make it simple for you is this request in the best interest of the city as you review this. I'll just highlight the concerns primarily fall within three categories: public safety, creation of enclaves, as you'll see in that map. Mr. Singer's property is in the yellow, and there are two other pieces of property within the city that would sort of, we call them enclaves, that would exist sort of as islands. And that's a concern, as well as some of the land is zoned commercial that obviously we, as the city, would lose out on future development. And so I think they've got some responses for that, but I'll leave that to them. And city staff is here, Ms. Martinez is here, and Mr. Evans obviously is they're kind of the resident experts, so as we go, they'll be able to answer kind of your specific questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to the applicant unless there's any questions before.
How long do you think you guys might be?
15, 20 minutes probably.
With questions? Do you mind if we take like a 3-minute break? Okay, we'll take a 3-minute break. Sorry. me take an emergency break there. We'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Thank you for putting us on your agenda and letting us speak with you this evening. Pardon me, I'm Richard Strauss. I'm an attorney in Denver. I'm with the law firm of S&D Law, located in downtown Denver. I'm representing R.C. Singer, Inc., which is the owner of the property that we're seeking to disconnect from the city. This is it's very unusual request that anybody makes to any municipality. If you look in the Colorado Revised Statutes, there's not a lot of discussion about the process of disconnection, nor is there much case law dealing with the topic. So we're kind of, to a certain extent, in uncharted territory here.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Excuse me just a moment. I met with Mr. Singer and his real estate gentleman, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to recuse myself from this proceedings.
Okay.
Do we have to make a motion on that, or does he just? No, he can just recuse himself. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No.
I don't feel comfortable about, because we've talked all through, I've talked with Mr. Singer about this whole problem, and I don't want to be a problem for him later on down the road.
No, thank you for disclosing that.
See you later.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I was going to start with that and I forgot. So.
Okay.
I saw his hand up.
So, the Singer property is on the, I don't know if you can see this very well or not. It's located at the, it's 275, give or take, acres of unimproved real estate that's located at the corner on the, at the corner of Mark Scheffel Road and Fontaine Boulevard. We're asking that the city disconnect, de-annex that property from the city. It was annexed into the city 30 plus years ago, and the reason why it was annexed in was because the then owners of the property, the Mr. and Mrs. Singer, were concerned about the airplanes flying over from the airport, and they felt if they were into the city of Fountain, that they could take advantage of the navigation easement that would protect them from that. Well, that was a long, long, long time ago. And the property has sat vacant for all these years. The parties have tried. Mrs. Singer and Mr. Singer have both passed on a long time ago, and the property's been left to their children. There are 5 Singer children. There's Brian Singer, Tim Singer, Ronald Singer, and Colleen and Maureen Singer. And they're all in their late 50s and 60s and wanting to do something with the property. They don't have the wherewithal to develop it themselves. So a number of years ago, they tried to sell the property. And what they've heard from numerous buyers, first of all, no one has been beaten down their door to buy the property anyway. It's been listed for sale with under the current listing contract for about 3.5 years. And what they're hearing from prospective buyers is that being in the city of Fountain is somewhat of a problem because of the length of time that's involved in getting approvals for development, the tap fees, et cetera. Now we're asking, our application is to disconnect this property from the city of Fountain to make it more marketable and developable. But as you can see, hopefully this will help a little bit. This property is already disconnected from the city. It sits in an island completely surrounded by unincorporated El Paso County property. The city boundaries on this, if you can see on this aerial photo, the city boundary is in the white lines, and the Singer property is not contiguous or adjacent to any of those city boundaries. So we have applied to the city, we applied in May to be disconnected from the city. And in connection with that process, we served notice of our application to the El Paso County Board of County Commissioners. We appeared in front of that board in early July. The board voted to allow us to meet with county officials to go over our proposal with them, and so that they could let us know what the challenges might be and what their, even though what their opinion is not binding in any manner on the city council, their input would certainly be relevant to your making your decision about whether you're going to grant our application or not. We met with the El Paso County people, and they pointed out certain considerations that we should be looking at, among which are a couple of the ones that are also on the summary from the Planning Commission that was presented to you as part of tonight's proceedings. Included among those are safety concerns primarily, and also the problem with leaving a portion of property on an island. And I can show you where that is. Those two squares there. The larger of the two squares is actually owned by one of the Singer children named Ronald Singer, and it's 35 acres. His home is located on there, and he's also got some farm and ranch property associated with the home. The smaller square is Widefield Sanitation, Water and Sanitation District. They are not part of our application. We approached them to find out if they wanted to be, and they either didn't respond or declined to be part of our application. So it is a concern that those properties are going to be left on an island if the RC Singer property is de-annexed. But the way I would respond to that is they're already on an island. The whole Singer property, as well as the Ronald Singer property and the Widefield property, are already on an island. And if the Singer property is de-annexed and sold to a developer who wants to develop it into, at least in part, residential property, they're going to be putting in the infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, sidewalks, gutters, all of the infrastructure that you need for residential development, which will actually make it vastly easier for the city of Fountain to provide any sort of services to those properties, both Widefield and the Ronald Singer property. So that's how I would respond to the concern about leaving those properties on an island. There's also concerns that were expressed about emergency services. And in the materials that were presented to you, it's indicated that there's a high probability, quote unquote, that El Paso County Sheriff will request mutual aid from the Fountain Police Department and vice versa if there's residential properties built on the Singer property. And once again, I would respond by saying that already happens. And if this property is de-annexed, the primary responsibility is going to be falling to El Paso County. And we've met with El Paso County, and they indicated to us that there would be no anticipating problems as a result of providing emergency services to that property if we are de-annexed. The fire protection would be provided by Security Fire Protection District. We've already spoken with them. They've given us an application to become part of their fire protection district and have indicated that they don't anticipate any problems allowing us in. Water and sanitation is already being provided by Widefield. Electrical is, as it states in your materials, pardon me, I gotta look this up. Electrical, natural gas is Black Hills Energy, and the City of Fountain the property is within the City of Fountain electrical service area. So the third consideration is that the City of Fountain in various long-term development plans anticipated that some portion or all of or some portions of this property would be for residential development, but some portions would be for commercial. The problem that the R.C. Singer family is having is, and then one of the reasons why, maybe the primary reason why we want to be de-annexed, is because there has been nobody who's approached them, who's looked at the property, who's contacted Mr. Carter Sales, who's here, and if you have questions, he's here to answer your questions, as is Brian Singer, the president of R.C. Singer, Inc. Nobody who's looked at this property has any intention whatsoever of doing commercial development. And the concept of requiring some commercial development on this property has been the single major hindrance to being able to market the property for development. So here's the dilemma. If the property stays in the city of Fountain, and the city of Fountain doesn't want to approve any sort of development of that property that does not include commercial development, and based upon the plan that's up there, the commercial development that they are wanting is right at the corner of Mark Scheffel Road and Fontaine Boulevard, which would be the primary entrance into the subdivision. Nobody's coming around that wants to do that. So if we're in the city of Fountain and that becomes a requirement for any further development of the property, it's going to remain vacant. Meanwhile, if we're out of the city of Fountain and that's not a requirement for future development of the property, then it's anticipated that they can build up to 900 homes there, which are going to the homeowners are going to be coming into the city of Fountain for retail services, to see doctors, to see dentists, professional services, and they're going to be utilizing, retail and tax-generating services for the city of Fountain. So it would be a net plus to allow this development to occur outside of the city of Fountain. The services that Fountain would need to provide to the property are minimal, and it's anticipated that there would be quite a bit of tax revenue from sales tax if the development's allowed to occur. The final 2 points are that we've presented what we think are some compelling reasons why the de-annexation should occur. The City of Fountain staff and the El Paso County staff have presented no compelling reasons not to grant our application. Neither one is recommending against it. The City of Fountain particularly is not recommending against it. They're not recommending for it either, but likewise El Paso County is not recommending against it. So if there's no compelling reason not to grant our application, we think you should grant it. So meanwhile, that's my pitch. As I said, Carter Sales, who's the listing broker for the property, is intimately familiar with it and is intimately familiar with the marketing efforts that have gone on. And Brian Singer, who's the president of R.C. Singer, Inc., which is the property owner, are both here. And so if you'd like to ask me any questions or ask them any questions, we'd be pleased to respond.
I don't know, at this point, I would like to, I guess, make some clarifying statements based on some of the things you said and your compelling arguments for de-annexation. And so if it's okay, I would like to counter some of those and retort in a way that's going to, because to me this seems kind of a slippery slope for cities to start de-annexing because, and simply basically what I heard is there's less requirements outside of your city, so we want to do that so we don't have to follow the same rules, and this is something we're dealing with as a city because, and we've even criticized within the city that there's too many rules that we have on developers and builders, but we have them in place for a reason. And the thing that we deal with most, particularly in this area, and I'll just say Lorson Ranch in particular, is they didn't follow many standards and and rules when putting this development in. But to the south, here in the city of Fountain, we're dealing with the repercussions of the standards that haven't been followed that we would hold in our city, as well as Colorado Springs. They have standards, more in particular stormwater. County doesn't have the same requirements as we do, and but we're the ones who deal with the fallout. And so one of your first comments was the family or the organization who's trying to de-annex is being told by developers, I'm assuming, that Fountain's hard to deal with. Well, I mean, it's been a charge by our citizens that we need to have smart growth and growth that pays its way. So we've held those requirements. And so the statement saying that, and I hope I'm being clear enough, that we just want out because it's easier to build somewhere or outside of the city, that's a slippery slope for us as a city to then start allowing portions to de-annex because it's simply easier somewhere else or outside.
Well, I want to be clear what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we want out because City of Fountain is difficult to deal with. There's lots of places that are difficult to deal with. I'm involved right now with a proposed development that's located in the town of Bennett, Colorado. And the property's been under contract it will be under contract by the time it closes for almost 2.5 years. So just because something is difficult doesn't mean you should avoid it. I think, as I agree with you, that you have building and development rules, regulations, and restrictions for a reason. And if that were the only reason why the Singer property wants to be de-annexed from the city, we wouldn't be here. We are asking, though, that it's not the restrictions on the development, the tap fees and, all those land use type of restrictions that are very appropriate. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the type of development that the city wants to see occur on this property is, from the experience of R.C. Singer, Inc., not feasible if it's in the city of Fountain.
Well, I'd heard that, but that was more in the latter part of your conversation. In the beginning, it was clearer about the requirements that the city imposes on developers, and this group, the Singer group, I'm sorry if I'm saying it misstating, it basically said we've been told that City of Fountain's difficult to work with. We need out. That's exactly what I heard.
Well, I'm not saying that that's not a factor, but certainly by no means the only factor, and it's not even the major one.
Okay, Mr. Appleton.
Was I not clear about that? I mean, I'm trying to be. Pardon?
I think you were pretty clear on what we all heard.
Okay, well, and
Excuse me.
Maybe I misspoke, but I certainly didn't want to indicate that just because the city of Fountain is not the easiest place to deal with, that's not why we're asking to be de-annexed.
Okay, beside that point, you said it would be much more desirable to build in the county than in the city. Why would it be much more desirable?
There's less services, and the services that they have are...
The services are already applied. You know what you're going to have. Now, the thing is, for the commercial area, you just have a designated bit of land set aside. That doesn't mean you have to have it to build houses. Have you had any offers for houses? I don't see anything being built there.
Well, there haven't been any offers for houses because based upon that plan that's up on the board and based upon the city's long-term zoning plans that have been updated, there's always a requirement, or there's always a little segment of the property that's been designated for commercial.
And
And
none of the rest of it's been built on. You haven't done anything with it.
Right, but that's the point of them coming, is
The point
they
is,
don't like the requirement.
they're not going to get somebody to build the whole thing.
The
Well, we don't
point,
know that.
the point that we're encountering, and I'm going to have Mr. Sales come up here and address that, but the point is that the property has been listed on the market off and on for 30 years, and there have been inquiries made about developing the property, and when it's been conveyed to them that there's a portion of the property that the city of Fountain wants for commercial development, they go away. And I'd like Mr. Sales to address that if it's okay with,
Yep,
if it's
let's go
okay
ahead.
with.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm Carter Sales. I'm the listing broker and agent for the owner, RC Singer Inc. What I'd like to do is talk about what's going on around the property. This is the Glen at Wildfield East. This is obviously Lorson Ranch. This is Carriage Meadows South, Carriage Meadows North. And then there's a new development up here. It's now going to be called the Trails at Aspen Ridge. So this is our competition. And when builders come in and look, they look at where they have to compete in the marketplace. So they are looking at this as this, sub-market that they're competing in. So they look at overall cost of development, and the fees and so forth in order to get that done. The other thing that we did do is we actually granted an easement so that this property up here can be developed. And this is going to provide all the sanitary sewer that's going to come down here to be serviced by Wide Food Water and Sanitation.
Which property? I didn't see your pointer.
It's right here at,
I can't see it.
it's on this property that he's pointing. Oh, you can't? This is what it's right, this is at Powers and Bradley up here.
Mm-hmm.
This is the trails at Aspen, I'm sorry, so, is that better? So, right here is the trails at Aspen Ridge.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a, so you can even see where they started the sewer process. This was taken in June this year. So this is all the, surrounding properties that developers look at. That developers look at in terms of where, we're looking for a master developer, by the way, okay?
Okay.
So they're looking, and this is a project that's probably 5, to 10 years out, depending on market demand and the economy. So that's really what we're faced with here in terms of the competition. Now, this is this white line represents the boundary of the city of Fountain, so that we're totally surrounded here by unincorporated El Paso County. This is the city of Colorado Springs here, and then more unincorporated El Paso County up here.
Okay.
So right across the fence line here, they can develop, for a certain cost structure, and
Yeah, I
right
get
right
that.
here we're not able to. So it's a matter of economics, and then also, obviously the surrounding area.
All right, thank you, and I get that. And it's weird totally that we have this entire enclave, when we've been trying to get rid of our enclaves. Why would the city, and I don't know, because it seems silly to me that we're gonna require a little bit of commercial on something like this in the middle of a bunch of residential. And it sounds like it's a line in the sand we've drawn. I don't know if that's truth, I'm just asking.
As you
Well, let me finish, because if it's as simple as we're for some reason requiring commercial in a plot like this, and they really simply don't want to put commercial, I don't know. We're fighting a weird battle, I guess is my question. So go ahead.
Sure. So what I'll let you know is, as you look at that yellow outline up there of the lots themselves, the original master plan or PUD that was given to the city, there's actually 3, I believe, different portions up there that are commercial. One is about 20 acres that you can see that borders Mark Shuffle. The other, as you go up on Fontaine, I want to say there was 2 other pieces, 7 to 10 acres apiece. So there's, as you look at the big yellow one, and the gentleman's pointing at them now, there's actually on the original plan, there's 3 different pieces of commercial. So it's really not just the one by Mark Shuffle. And what someone did back when they put that together is they just looked at the major corridors. So they basically bordered the major corridors with some commercial areas so that you would have not just the rooftops, so that there would be some commercial uses within those rooftops. And kind of what we're seeing out there now, Mayor, you mentioned Lorson Ranch and Carter mentioned the Glens. We've got Peaceful Valley on the other side, is we do have a lot of rooftops going up with no commercial. So as you know, with the city, it's just not a policy of ours. Residences, a residential development, as everyone knows, costs us money. The only way we get that money back to afford the public safety services, the infrastructure costs, and those type of things are from the commercial pieces. So it wouldn't, as a city business-wise, it wouldn't make any sense for us to say, yeah, we don't mind if you put 900 homes up there if we don't have a tax base of commercial sales coming back to pay for those services.
Okay.
So there's really no battle, it's just kind of a business, it's a business formula.
So it's not a requirement?
No, we could rezone this all residential, and I think that's what the gentleman was referring to when he talked about the difference. I think their goal or their hope is to take it into the county, and then ultimately, as they've discussed with us, make those rooftops and get rid of that commercial property.
Well, a couple of points here. So commercial here, all along Fontaine here, with the exception of this residential here, and then commercial. So it's basically bounded. So this is a commercial piece, commercial, commercial, and then commercial here all the way along Mark Scheffel.
And Carter, real quickly, I want to make sure that the council understands and the public that's here and that's watching, that wasn't a city plan that was done. That was a plan that was proposed by either the property owners or the developers at the time.
It was a 30 years ago when it was annexed. So, and this property has been basically available for that last 30 years. But what I'd like to do is just point out, this is the long-range comprehensive plan for the city that was initially proposed, I think it was in 2005, and then updated again in 2017. This is the Singer property here. Everything in yellow here would be single family with no commercial along Mark Scheffel. This little piece that looks kind of like a tooth is multifamily, and then there's two small neighborhood commercial pieces here. So the way it would happen is, if this was disconnected, this piece in white still stays as 35 acres in the city of Fountain, and that could very well, depending on when this is developed, go commercial depending on demand.
Right.
But right now, and in the past, there just hasn't been the demand for commercial. I mean, the City of Fountain Economic Development Department and so forth, they know about the land in terms of commercial, and we have not seen, any buyers that are looking, for commercial. So if there are 900 rooftops here, right now the tax revenue that comes to the city is a little over $22 a year, based upon the current assess rate and mill levy. If there's 900 homes here, they're going to come right down here, shop, get services in Fountain. And I guess the other thing is, with all this land that's along Mark Scheffel and along Mesa Ridge Parkway, that does afford opportunities in the future for, commercial development. We would love to sell it as commercial if there was a market. It's worth a lot more money than residential. At $3 a foot, it's $130,000 an acre versus about $25,000, an acre right now for residential. So certainly the economic advantages of commercial make a lot of sense, but there has to be demand. And it's not there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions right now for Mr. Sales? Okay.
Just one other point. I want to make sure everybody understands. As a staff, we have asked Mr. Singer and Carter to work with those two other island properties up there to try to get them in the fold, because we don't want islands. So Mr. Singer did meet with his brother, who owns the one big piece, and the other is Widefield Water, I believe it is. We're trying to get rid of the islands, not create more smaller islands. So I just want to let you know that we did ask them a couple of months ago.
And we did do that,
Right, he
and
mentioned
we just
that.
don't have control over that.
Okay, Mr. Rick, you can sit, I'll get to you, because I want to give council an opportunity to, I don't want you standing the whole night. Ms. Thompson, your light's on. Or are you, is there more?
I'm Brian Singer.
Okay.
And I am president of RC Singer, Inc. There are 5 of us we've been on this property for basically 58 years. That my mom and dad, they bought the property. We grew up as kids there, and we had a wonderful time growing up on a farm atmosphere. We've now reached where the oldest is 67 and the youngest is 57. We're at a point in our lives where we need to move on. And this property has been sitting with us Dad died about 30 years ago, and Mom passed away 20 years ago. And basically, we have not been able to get this thing marketed. And I know you ask, well, we're trying to get out because, we want to sell it. Well, yes, we want to sell it. We need to move on. We're going to end up, some of us are going to die, and what's going to happen is it's going to go to the kids and the grandkids. And because it's in basically a corporation, you're going to have a lot of individuals that are all voting to try to decide what to do with this property. And right now, in the city of Fountain, you're basically getting $22.26 a year off of taxes on this piece of property. If it is developed, you're going to have benefits because people are going to come down Mesa Ridge Road, go into the Fountain, to the shopping center. They're going to go into the restaurants. They're going to go into the services from this piece of property. That's a win-win. By being surrounded basically by the county, we are an island. And by letting us out, you're getting rid of 275 acres, and it's actually more than that because there's 22 more acres in there that are with the county. This piece right here is in the county. And so it's actually 297 acres that you no longer have to deal with. The roads, if this property is ever developed and it is in the county takes care of that. Okay, you're going to get the commercial coming to you because you are the closest commercial right now, but you're going to get the benefit of not having to take care of the property, which, basically the city of security is going to take care of the fire, and then we have, the county taking care of the police. So all of these, all of a sudden, are not expenses that are going to be big to the city of Fountain. And it's a win-win. That's how we're looking at it, is let's make this a win-win situation. We just want to move on with our lives, and we haven't been able to. 3.5 years we've had this marketed, and we're getting nobody. Yet everything around us that's in the county is developing. Why is that happening? What are we doing wrong, or what is happening that, when we put this in front of the county, even the county commissioner said, that's strange that everything around you is being developed and you guys aren't. Well, that's the same question we're asking. And so what we're asking is for you to consider this request to de-annex us and let us out to continue to move on with our lives as a family. And it can be a win-win situation because it will generate revenue for the city of Fountain. Otherwise, it sits and nothing's happening to it. And if it sits for another 5-10 years, then we're going to be gone. And I don't know if it'll ever get developed. But thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your words. The county can't understand why. It's because they don't require anything. They just let them build anything they want. So, Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. Very interesting presentation. I respect the real estate's person's need to represent his clients in the best and get the property sold. And I understand that a lot of times they give you interesting information when they want to do that. I have several concerns. Has the county promised you bus service out to your new development if that were to happen?
I don't,
My understanding, Mountain Metro really isn't providing any bus services out to those, so you'd be leaving people that weren't driving without any way to obtain services. And I'm sure the city could figure out how to get a bus stop out there very easily for you. Secondly, one of the things that people are requesting in these communities are walkability. And if you're not, where are they going to walk to? How are they going to walk to these services if you don't have any commercial services out there? We have a lot of people that they want to come home from work and they want to walk to the grocery store. They want to walk to the dollar store. They want to walk to wherever and pick up a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread. They don't want to have to get in their car and drive by to Safeway. And if you haven't been by Safeway at 5 o'clock in the evening, try to find a place to park and get in there, get in and out pretty quickly. So I think it's pretty maxed out. I think we do need more commercial properties. And I have grave concerns. We're actually working on the 2045 long-range regional transportation plan on PPACG. And I just have a lot of concerns with a lot of these developments going on out east that we don't have any control over them, and they are dumping into our city and are going to create tremendous traffic jams because they're not being exited out correctly onto Mark Shuffle or Fontaine. And for you to keep saying, oh, it's going to be wonderful, all our traffic dumps into the city of Fountain onto Mesa Ridge Parkway. Well, I will tell you right now, Mesa Ridge Parkway is full almost 24 hours a day. So, that's why we need some control over this. And I'm getting a little wound up here, aren't I? And I just have very, very specific concerns of people continuing to develop urban developments in rural areas. And then they come in here and they tell us that they're not going to need our services, they're not going to need the commercial properties. Well, I'm telling you now, those people need them. So I am actually leaning towards this staying in the city of Fountain so that we have some control over how that develops. I think you are going to sell it. I think the reason they're really pushing to sell it and change this is because of all the development going on around you. And I think you honestly know it is going to sell, and it's just a matter of time. Everybody sits on a piece of property until the right buyer comes along. And so I really think we need to hang on to this. I think our police department and our fire department are going to be responding out there. One sheriff's officer for 900 homes. One sheriff's officer for 900 homes. I want you to really think about that and market it to your people. We will provide you one sheriff's officer when he's available because we pulled out of the city of Fountain. I have very specific concerns about that. And we can provide those services with our police department or public safety. And if he wants, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. But my biggest concern is the tax base that we need from the commercial property, as Todd stated, to take care of those homes and take care of the accidents that are going to occur and the emergency services that they're going to need out there and the transportation that they're going to need. So I understand that the people want to sell it. I get it. We've all gotten stuck with properties, We've all had various things happen when we've tried to make investments throughout our lifetimes. But I think on this instance, we need to keep this city in the city of Fountain. And I think I have some pretty compelling reasons where we need to do that. So I'll wind down now.
Anything else from council at this point? I want to let public speak if there's any questions. Okay, I'm going to allow some public comment real quick.
Gordon Rick, Countryside. I'm going to read from the staff report. As the surroundings areas develop, there will be a significant need for commercial land in this corridor to serve existing and future residents. It would be poor long-range planning for the city to relinquish this land. We just had a report, I believe it was, Scott, last council meeting, where you showed the graph that showed our tax dollars were not keeping up with our population growth. Okay? We've got to get more commercial in so we can get that tax growth up to where it's even with the number of people we're bringing in. And if we're going to give up commercial land, we're never going to be able to do that. I know it's painful. I have lived out in countryside for 23 years. There's been a 5-acre plot out there waiting for somebody to get in there. We're finally getting somebody in. They're finally going to start building, but it just takes a while. Second point, as Todd will tell, or Troy will tell me, I am not allowed to speak for the Planning Commission. However, in the past, when people have brought plans to us, we have been flexible in the past of accommodating developers moving commercial land around, trying to help them, give them options to make it more palatable for them to use. We are not inflexible on the Planning Commission, and we would be more than willing to work with a developer, should he come before the commission, to try and accommodate the development. Finally, I don't understand why this didn't come before Planning Commission. As the staff said, they're not making any recommendation.
Right.
And they're basically putting you guys out on an island. We could have reviewed this, asked some questions, and at least come up with a recommendation. You're under no obligation to follow our recommendations, but it would have been nice to come before planning and let us give you some thoughts. Thank you.
Go ahead, because I think there's, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly the Planning Commission is advisory, of course, but this is a straight up city council decision. So, I mean, you can request information from any staff member or commission or board that you'd like, but ultimately it's the city council that needs to review, kind of do a deep dig of the facts to make the ultimate decision. And so certainly that could have been an option, but here, a lot of times Planning Commission kind of gets into the weeds of in order to make a recommendation. Here, kind of the state requires that the council is the one that digs into the weeds. So we just wanted to make sure that the council was truly understanding the facts here.
Okay.
I have one last question. Scott, the comprehensive overall development plan is developed by the citizens, is that correct?
Well, it's developed by the city.
Developed by the city, but citizen input.
Absolutely.
So obviously, some citizens a few years ago, when this was brought in, saw the need, were forethinking and saw the need for that to have some, potentially have some commercial property out there and to be in the city.
I need you to use the light because I was in the middle of trying to say something and you interrupted. But we've also been through situations where the forethought wasn't the greatest forethought either. And so, anybody else from public that want to come on up?
I wanted to see if I could address.
Let's listen to the rest of the public because I want to give them a chance, and then
okay.
you'll have an opportunity to
Certainly, thank you.
respond.
Daryl Couch, Ponteris. I guess the first thing that caught my attention was I understand there was nothing short of an apocalyptic fit over trying to withdraw Builder's Lane because there was no recompense to the city, and yet I see under the proposed motion, and I move to approve the ordinance on the first reading. I don't see where the same standard is being applied across the board here. I see that there is property that is within the city, and in one case, we're screaming that we had a road that was never built that somebody wanted to withdraw, and on the other hand, we have a piece of property where somebody applied to be a part of the city, and now they'd like to withdraw for financial reasons. I certainly understand. I think some things may need to be reconsidered about what makes these properties so hard to develop, but I don't think we're applying the same standard across the board, and I certainly would like to hear why staff moves to approve. I don't quite catch the
Okay, well, let's
standard.
respond.
It's a good question, and the reason is that I wrote it that way because the ordinance is written that way. because of the state law standard that the council would have to apply. That's the way that I wrote the ordinance, the proposed ordinance, because the council has to apply that best interest standard. And so that's the way that I had to write the ordinance. And so obviously if the council wants a motion to deny, that would be an appropriate motion as well. But the way that the proposed ordinance had to be written is in the affirmative. So that's why it's written like that, for the council to either vote up or down, obviously. So, and obviously we're talking about this particular circumstance. Mr. Couch, I don't know, I don't remember how it was written back then. Probably Builders Drive probably should have been written like that, the same way. But I'd have to go check how that commentary was written. But it just, that wasn't necessarily a recommendation. That was just the way in which the council needs to make the motion. So
I just wanted to correct his statement.
About what?
About the road, we threw a fit over it just because they were going to ban it. That wasn't true. It's not why.
I'm Fran Carrick, and I appreciate what you're going through. It's been, I understand it's been 10 years since we've had any development, approved development for Fountain. Is that right?
Sounds right. I mean,
10 or 20 years. And when I ask about commercial development for Fountain, I'm told repeatedly, for whatever reason, we just can't get it here.
By who? Sorry, by who? By city staff?
Yeah, I mean, we've
opened a whole bunch of new businesses. That's what
we talked about that. I think you said 12. What'd you say?
close to 120 new businesses
in 10 years. Yeah, and they're fast food and they're service stations. And I know that that provides employment, but that's not the kind of business that the citizens in Fountain are looking for. Some retail, we just lost the shoe store up there.
Nothing to do with us. The entire chain closed. Are you talking about Payless shoe stores?
Yes, Payless shoe stores.
The entire chain closed.
Well,
So it has nothing to do
but
with us.
we lost that. It's still dollars, and nothing is in there now. I just, I talked to Scott about this the other day. 15 years ago, we needed more rooftops so that we could get more business in here. Well, we've doubled. We've more than doubled. And look at the business that we have. I don't know what the answer is, and when I talk to city staff, they've told me that they don't either. I talked to Kimberly. She said she tries to get the businesses in here, but they don't last. I don't know what the answer is either.
So can I ask a question? Is it just the businesses that you don't want or that you want aren't coming, or is it just because you also said that we have fast food, we have all this, which I see tons and tons of people going into, and there's usually lines to get in, so people want that.
Well, they do, but
we are again, and we've talked about this before. We're fighting Colorado Springs, who it's easier for them to attract those businesses that people want down here, and if those business plans don't want to come down here,
that's right. And why don't they want to come down here? When I tell you that a developer or a contractor says, we don't want to build in Fountain because it is just too tough, I don't take that as a compliment at all. I see it that maybe we need to compromise more.
Okay, and I get that, but I do take that as a compliment, because when we do get people that come in and build, it's for the right reasons. And we've heard pretty clearly tonight that they don't like the requirements that we have. And you've seen what's gone on in Lorson Ranch, and they just threw in, there's no commercial up there. And they've thrown in, I don't know how many hundreds of homes.
And they're going strong.
Right, yeah. But we're dealing with the repercussions of those non-requirements up there as well.
Well, I don't know what the answer is, but I understand. I see Mr. Singer's point. I understand where he's coming from, and I don't know what the answer is, but I don't know that anyone here does either, because we're growing with rooftops. Would you agree with that? The Mesa's growing, but not down here. We don't have anything down here. And it's fast food and service stations up on the Mesa. So I wish I had a solution. Because I don't like just saying that I see the problem. I wish there was a solution, and I hope that I will be able to get more information to help with this.
And it's not as simple as we are tough to work with. It really is not that simple. That's what they want to say because they have to follow certain requirements. Every city has them, and when they go to Colorado Springs, they have just as stringent as requirements as we do. Sometimes tougher. But it's easier to build in Colorado Springs because there's just a lot more places that could go. And then you're also talking about the actual owners of the property who all of a sudden they see dollar signs, and so well now I'm gonna increase the price on you because
I know.
And so
I've heard
it's
that
not.
too.
It's
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
But we need to kind of bring this back to this particular parcel and property, and it's a great discussion to have because. We've been getting that a lot lately as to why don't we have the commercial? Why don't we have the things here that we need to have or that we're asking for? Again, we're not creating requirements and rules that nobody can follow because some of them are following these rules and they're coming in and they're bringing in their businesses. Again, it's maybe not what we want to see or it's maybe too much of one thing, but they're still following the rules and able to do it. And so that's that piece on that. I think in order to help Mr. Singer and what they're doing here, I want to kind of get us back onto that discussion, and we can discuss the other stuff at another time. But and maybe that would be a good topic for discussion soon about just what can we do to attract more and in that aspect. But I do want to get back to this, and if there's anything specifically about this, I want to get anybody's comments. But I'm going to kind of start wrapping up here because I don't want to belabor the point either. And you did want to respond, or do you want to hear what council has to say?
No, I did want to respond to a couple of points. First of all, if the city grants the de-annexation or disconnection application, you're not giving up commercial property. The property is not zoned commercial now. It's zoned PUD, which would allow for commercial development, but it's not zoned for commercial. So you're not actually giving up. What you'd be giving up is the possibility that down the road, somebody might want to put commercial there, and you might want to control the development to require them to do that. That's what you're giving up, but you're not actually giving up any commercial property because it's not there now. Second point, I was actually very surprised to hear that there hasn't been any significant development for over 10 years. Did I hear that correctly?
Approved new developments.
Approved new development. I grew up in Colorado. I grew up in southeast Denver. And I hate to admit this, but until very recently, I'd never been in the city of Fountain. It's a very nice place. It seems like it would be a very good place for people to live and to build their businesses. But I think you do kind of have to ask yourself, why, given what a nice place it is, why hasn't there been any significant development?
Because they were already approved and the recession kept them from building, and now they are.
We've got thousands of lots that are already approved.
Okay.
Building out.
Okay. Thank you for.
And that's why I clarified with approved new developments. I mean, we
Okay.
have developments that have been building for years and continue, and there are some other coming that are already, well into that process. So
Well, that's good to know, which is encouraging that some of these other properties that are along Mark Shuffle Road.
And actually, I think most of what's within our city limits are already planned developments. So it's not that we're not we're at a point where there's no more to
Okay.
no more space, so.
All right, so
Unless we annex more, so if you want to talk to the people south of you to annex in, then maybe that'll solve the problem, but I digress.
I think that's not quite the way we're going here.
County build.
So I would like to answer your question, Ms. Thompson, about bus service. That was not brought up in any of the discussions that we had, either with the City of Fountains. We met. We didn't meet with the Planning Commission per se, but we did meet with Ms. Martinez, Mr. Evans, and a few other people whose names I can't remember right off the top of my head, for over an hour. And then we went from them to meet with the people from El Paso County. So, we in essence met with some portion at least of the powers that be in the Planning Commission, both with Fountain and with El Paso. And the concept of bus service and walkability was not brought up in any of those discussions. I think they're valid points, but not necessarily for R.C. Singer, Inc. They would be valid points, I think, for somebody who wants to develop the property, but that's not where we are. My client is not going to develop this property. They're going to sell it to somebody who will, and I think those would be very valid points to bring up with them.
It's a great reason to keep it in Fountain, because we can provide bus service.
Well, except if it hinders the development period. If the control is that you have to do it a certain way, which includes a certain portion of the property for commercial development, Mr. Sales indicated that he doesn't think there's a market for that. So if you want to exercise that control, that's certainly your right, and it's certainly your right and your power to deny our application. But the flip side of that is that for a very long time, there may not be any development there. And as Mr. Singer pointed out, we think it's a win-win for the city to allow the development to occur, even if it doesn't include commercial, because the people are going to be coming into Fountain to utilize the retail and the commercial services in the city of Fountain, which will generate tax revenue for the city. In terms of the traffic, that's going to happen if the development occurs within the city of Fountain or within El Paso County. It's a byproduct whenever you're going to develop a fairly large piece of property. There's going to be traffic, and it's going to add traffic to the existing roadways and may involve down the road improvement of those roadways, either in the county or in connection with the county and the city of Fountain. But once again, that's something that's not going to happen for years and years and years. And I'm sure that traffic control and traffic considerations are part of your overall master planning. You also expressed the concern about urban development in rural areas, and I certainly sympathize with that, empathize with that. Having grown up in Colorado and seen the parts of Denver that I grew up in, and the parts that were not in the part that I grew up in, seeing this massive development in ways that I'm not very happy with, but it's a reality of life. So that's really probably all I have to add.
Okay.
If you have any further
Sir,
questions.
can I answer one of his things? Don't we have a traffic impact fee?
Not currently in this area, but there will be.
Right, so to help with the traffic, if the parcel was stayed in the city, we could help with a traffic impact fee to help take care of part of that.
Well, in developments like this, often, I don't know about all the time, but certainly often include off-site subdivision improvement agreements that require the developer to improve the roadways leading into the development.
And does the county require that? The county does not.
But they could. I understand.
Okay. Yep.
One more point.
Yep.
So on the commercial again, and I know that if so, can you see the pointer now at Fontaine and Mark Shuffle?
Yeah.
There's 2 vacant pieces here. This is designated commercial. That still sits. Up here at Powers and Fontaine, this corner here, this is a 4-lane major arterial here. There's no commercial on this corner. This is a 2-lane with a center turn median. They don't have traffic counts for Mark Shuffle Road. So what I'm saying is, with the amount of traffic drives retail, okay? Traffic drives commercial development. So the most likely commercial development that you will see probably is this corner, and it still sits vacant on Powers and Fontaine. So it's a formula. And retailers have that formula. They know how much traffic, they know how many house stops that they need in order to support their businesses. So, in terms of shopping centers, same thing with, commercial development. It's a formula. And my goodness, we have been trying to sell this as commercial, no takers. And as I can say, we'd love to sell it as commercial. It's worth 4 or 5 times as much as residential.
Isn't that a church?
The church is on this corner here, I believe.
County.
Isn't that the church on that corner?
Familiar with, there's 147 homes that are to build in that area.
In which area? This area right here?
Yes.
Yeah, but that's in the county. That's not even part of this.
All I'm saying is, in terms of the traffic, I mean, when you go down Powers from downtown, there's no commercial development up, until you get to around the airport, so.
Mayor, real quickly, everything that Carter says is accurate on that. And I just want to point out the piece of property that you talked about on that intersection are in the county. So when you get down to the county or the city, he is correct. The formula just hasn't worked for commercial to start out there yet. But Kimberly has kind of put us as a staff on notice that we have to be very careful on giving away or letting go any of our commercial properties because our limited amount is shrinking. So just understand, I love that Carter pointed that out, but it is correct. Regardless if it's in the county or the city, in this area right here, that formula for retail hasn't come to fruition yet. If we do choose to give up commercial properties, then we don't have the ability later on to have those in the city. So Kimberly has made that very clear to us.
Okay. Mr. Applegate.
Yeah, on the map here that we have on the printout, it's got this little strip to the south of the yellow with the blue hashes. Is that still gonna be part of the city? This here? No, the long skinny one right there. What is that?
I think it's just a boundary.
It gets wider and wider as it goes?
No, that's the boundary of El
It's just
Paso
the
County.
boundary.
So the tan area on the map is the property in question to be disconnected
Okay,
from the
well,
city.
it's got the blue hash.
Blue
which is
hash
just
is
like
still within the city as a right-of-way easement or some other type of an easement.
Why would we want that? They can have
The
that if they
request was
get the
only
rest
for
of it.
that parcel.
We don't wanna build a road there.
I don't even know if this question can be answered tonight. I'm sorry, I didn't push my button.
Yeah.
Push my button.
And so what we need to do here is come to a conclusion at this point. So, council, opportunity for last comments and questions. I don't want to get into the arguments and the what-ifs, because, we can what-if this thing for the next 3 days, and I don't want to do it, and that's what keeps coming up is, what if we have this? What if we don't have this? We don't know what's going to happen here. The question at the table is, do we let them de-annex or not? Okay, so your light's on, go ahead.
Since this is in the city of Fountain and has been for a number of years, can I assume it is not part of the RTA?
That would be a correct assumption.
So, since they're not part of the RTA, if they were to be de-annexed, they're not going to probably provide bus service because they're not part of the RTA. Is that correct?
It works the other way too.
Yeah. They are in the city of Fountain. They're not part of the RTA. They're not going to have to pay the higher tax base. And because, they wouldn't be in the RTA until that came across in the ballot in a few more years.
That's a great point.
And so their tax base would actually end up being higher if they were to develop commercial property there? If they were in the RTA, their tax is higher than ours at the moment?
Well, they would have to
pay an extra percent?
They would have to probably petition, the RTA would have to petition the city council to change the boundaries of the RTA in order to collect the tax for the RTA on that. So really, the RTA would not service this area, sort of period, unless the council.
Could we do a quid pro quo and tell
Right,
them they can
yeah.
have
So
this if we can
I'm-
have ours?
Yeah, so it's certainly, I did not think about that, but that's a fantastic point, is that it works the other way. We've seen it work to our disadvantage.
Trade.
In this case, the de-annexation would not change the boundaries of the RTA.
They wouldn't want it anyway.
And so, my guess is, I mean, certainly
Who would they
the,
go to? What's where it's
the
not
RTA could
city,
service
there's
the
no
area
city to get improvement from.
out of the goodness of their hearts, but
Yeah,
would not,
right.
but we all know that they would not service this area.
They're not gonna, they don't even service the areas they're already collecting tax for in many cases.
Okay. Any further comment or question on this from council?
I would like to make one point, though, as far as the
Go
police
ahead.
department is concerned, with the officer being one officer over there at 900. After discussing with Todd and definition of what it looks like for close proximity dispatching, more than likely, 9 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10, Fountain would be the cover officer to go over there. And if I were to look at the big picture of that, that would be equivalent to maybe 3 more officers a year, 2 to 3 more officers a year, which would increase that budget approximately $160,000, $170,000 a year. Officers worth about $85,000 a year without benefits. Then with the additional traffic coming into the city, as we already know, congested, more accidents, that would require us to respond.
Because keep in mind something, there is not one deputy that's assigned to this neighborhood. The one deputy that we're talking about is for the entire wide field area. That's called District 6. So District 6 has one deputy per shift, not this 900 homes. That 900 homes is they'll drive through there when they have time or they have a call for service. So there is not one deputy assigned there. That's for the entire District 6 in Whitefield.
Okay, but, okay, some of those county issues, they're not our problem if they're not part of the city. I mean, we'll have to probably help out, but,
We will cover for them.
okay, so, let me just,
No?
no, we don't, it's mutual aid. It's mutual aid.
I see.
Okay, so I kind of like what Ms. Carrick said. I understand your plight and you want to get rid of it. And for me, and I'm just going to be brutally honest, I frankly don't know why we want to keep a parcel in that's not even in our city boundaries. If it's for the hope of maybe we're going to get commercial. We're already struggling with the infrastructure, the boundaries that we do have, to try to hold on to something that maybe we're going to require some commercial. Now, whether it gets there or not, I don't know, because I look at the entire area, and we can't just look at this one little parcel of property and expect, you know, if that one little corner that we think we're going to require commercial on, is that really going to offset anything? The likelihood is, as it goes in the city of Fountain, it'll be a pizza place or a auto parts store, so I don't know how that's going to really offset what we got going on here. So to me, I really don't, and we can get into what ifs about bus service and all those things, and that's for later on down the road. What I see is a group that's trying to get rid of a property. The scariest part for me is just the de-annexation and the reasoning for the de-annexation is because we have been told that Fountain's hard to work with. It's simply what it comes down to. And for me personally, if this wasn't an island unto itself, I would, it would be a no-brainer for me. I don't know why we would have the conversation. But again, to me, I don't know why we're going to fight over if they want out. I don't know what the benefits for the city would be. All that county stuff that's going on, this one little section here is not going to make or break the bank for us, I don't think, personally. We already provide services out there as it is. and we're not getting anything for it.
There's nobody there now.
Well, I'm talking, we still provide services to Lorson Ranch if they need it. It's mutual aid all in this area with the sheriff, who has the one sheriff out there. So it's not, nothing is gonna change because of this one little property, for better or worse. And to really be tied to a 35-year plan, I don't know. And this is the struggle, on this one. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I don't know where I'm gonna vote on this yet. It's just, go ahead, Ms. Thompson.
We have citizens upset because we built a fire department and we built a school on Highway 85 on some of the last remaining commercial property in town. Now we have a chance to have a property that's already in the city that could potentially, if the developer chooses, they can move that commercial, they don't have to leave it exactly where it's at, they can move it around. We could potentially have commercial property right on Mark Shuffle, as all that traffic is going up and down Mark Shuffle. Lorson Ranch has put no commercial property in, Kacharas has put no commercial property in. I don't think Colorado, what is that thing called, Colorado Center has any commercial property out there. It could potentially be the commercial property out in that area, and commercial property is taxed at a much higher tax rate. What is residential property taxed at? 6-something%? And commercial property is taxed at like 21%. 7, okay. So it's just a much higher tax rate. And I think if it's already in the city, we keep it in the city.
Okay, and that's your opinion?
And that's my strong opinion.
Okay, and my strong opinion is I don't feel like this is really gonna break the bank for us. I think if we knew for sure that we're gonna get something in there that's gonna bring a ton of money in, be a different story. But this has been sitting here for how many years and nothing has happened. The commercial that's already zoned for there in the county's relaxed rules still hasn't occurred. And so the thought that we're holding on to something that's gonna bring in all this tax revenue, when, as Ms. Carrick even said, we're losing businesses in the city to internet, we're losing them to all these other things, and they're not getting replaced. Why wouldn't we focus on the things that we have in town that need to be filled, rather than trying to force it on something else? Anybody else?
Greg?
If you don't have an opinion, you don't have an opinion, but you need to vote, so.
I agree.
No, I don't want to sit here and look at Greg to say something. If no one has their lights on, then we just need to make a motion and do something about it at this point, so.
Well, do something. Make a motion.
I would make a motion to deny.
Okay, is that the way to word that one? Okay. Okay, we have a motion to deny
Second.
and a second. Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. Please vote.
Four yes, 1 no. Mayor Ortega voting no. Motion carried.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know what the process is for the applicant at this point, other than best of luck. I don't know. Sorry it didn't work out. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to item 10, correspondence, comments, and ex officio reports. Mr. Trainer? Mr. Evans? Mr. Johnson? Chief? Commander? Ms. Martinez? Mr. Trilch? Anything from IT? We have a new face? Nope, okay. Ms. Huffman?
Nothing
Anything from City
tonight.
Clerk? Okay, Council, Ms. Thompson? Mr. Lauer?
Nothing more from me, thanks.
Mr. Cope?
Nothing here.
Mr. Applegate?
Nothing.
Okay, our next meeting is September 24th. We're adjourned.
I agree with your points, Gabe. It is in our sphere of boundary.